No. And so, with less than 2 minutes to go for today's message, here I am. And that's my tech tip for anybody that's new that's watching. Come on before you say you're going to come on. That way, you give people that one more chance. Because, come on, people have other stuff to do. They don't sit around and like, oh, well, let me wait for 11 o'clock. Sporty's coming on. No, stuff is going on. And then they say, oh my gosh, that's right. The wonderful Sporty King is coming on. Let me get over this. I can see it live, even though I can be blessed by watching the video. But man, it's nothing like being live. Then you get your comments in the chat. You gotta have perks. We got less than a minute to go for today's message. Welcome to your first Friday in November. Da-da-da. Wow. So you have to find ways to celebrate everything. Everything is something worth celebrating. And guess what? At the top of that list is you. You are worth celebrating and you are worthy of being celebrated. So let's get ready for today's message. Let's get ready for today's gift and let's do it. So first, let's say to you, goodness to you. Goodness. And you know, I always say goodness. Why? Because I don't know whether you're watching morning, afternoon, or evening. But isn't it great to have good in front of your salutation? Welcome to Gift Friday. I created it because so often we hear people say TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. But I say, what allure does Friday have to the person who took their last breath on Thursday? Therefore, I use what I learned we had a spoiler alert click, Psalm 92:2. And that is, it is good to proclaim your unfailing love in the morning, your faithfulness in the evening. So instead of using TGIF, I use TGIT. Thank God it's today. And then TGIT, thank God it's tonight, which also allows me to move into another one of my now favorite scriptures, and that's Matthew 6:34. So don't worry about tomorrow, but tomorrow will bring its own worries. TGIT, thank God it's tonight. Today's trouble is enough for today. TGIT, thank God it's today. Darkness always precedes the light. So what I first offer is just another way of looking at TGIF. And let's look at it as trusting God is free. Trusting God is free. Think about what it costs to be blessed with the greatest gift of the day. Waking up. Doesn't cost you a dime. And that still moves us into realizing we can do a little bit of math. We can do some subtraction and some addition to our day at all times. First, we can subtract that T from the front of TGIF and add it to the back. And we get GIFT, we get gift. And what we should really be thanking God for, and that is today, GIFT. God is for today. And so Gift Friday is the online sharing of one of my original poetic messages so that you can use it to help start a conversation that could change somebody's life, including yours, for the better. Each poem will be my gift to you. So here you'll hear me read it and share this week's gift. And if you like a colorful keepsake copy, you'll find it in the thread on Facebook and LinkedIn, where I'll be dropping it after I read. Now, today, I've chosen a poem from my book, I Found Out I'm Living, an affirmation of life. A book about the joy of spiritual awakening. It's the sequel to I Found Out I'm Dying, about letting go of the physical self. I Found Out I'm Dying, a celebration of life, not about dying at all, but about celebrating while you're here, because one day you won't be physically. So I Found Out I'm Living, an affirmation of life. Well, now that I know I will give up the physical self, I can celebrate and affirm the spiritual self even more. And I think as I read this poem from this book, I think of the saying, oh, how things have changed. Oh, how things change, yet remain the same. I'm sorry, that's the saying. You see, I wrote the poem in 1998, and I see it ringing through social and broadcast media everywhere here in 2025, especially in this political environment. So this poem is called Cloudy Days. And I invite you to hear how it also calls for us to shift our perspective by creatively opening up our imagination to see things differently. Cloudy day. Today I watched the majesty of the clouds move as they rested in pantomime against the blue ceiling. Well, at least I thought it was blue. I think it was blue. See, blue is what I saw. And in life, sometimes all we see are colors instead of how well they work together. How brown will stand still for green to grow. Green invites yellow, even burnt orange or red. Then red returns the favor by pulling out all the stops to go through yellow and become one with green again. But I know what you're thinking. What about gray? What about gray? Because sometimes it's the master of the day. Well, not really. We just let it feel that way. We let it feel that way where we lose focus and allow the condescending haze of doubt to conjure up colorless shades of ignorance that flash around us and rape our imagination of its luster. Without a doubt, gray does this by choice. Yet it also invites us to recognize it as the midpoint between two extremes, black and white. It reminds us that there can be the perfect blend of sharing if we're willing to keep the scale from losing its balance. Today, I watched the majesty of the clouds move as they rested in pantomime against the blue ceiling. And I was reminded that in life, sometimes all we see are colors instead of how well they work together. Cloudy day. I want you to remember to shift your perspective by creatively opening up your imagination to see things differently. Now, you've heard me say, control your vocabulary. Don't let your vocabulary control you. So let's immediately look at the title and see that we can hear cloudy days as D-A-Z-E, but we can also hear it as cloudy D-A-Y-S, cloudy days. And imagine that over time, we can lose focus based on who our messenger is. Here's Google's definition of daze. As a verb, it's to make someone unable to think or react properly, to stupefy, to bewilder. She was dazed by his revelations. As a noun, it's a state of stunned confusion or bewilderment. He was walking around in a daze. As a sentence, he was walking around in a daze, and she was dazed by his revelations. Or if you prefer, she was dazed by his revelations, yet he was walking around in a daze. Depends on your messenger. But neither way resolves the challenge we face when we choose to keep a closed mind about our situation and discussion about racial tension and social injustice. It's a people problem that will touch each of us in more ways than it already has. And with its next touch, you get to share its next touch. How will you do it? Are you willing to recite a closing stanza? And more importantly, can you live it? Here's that closing stanza in the poem. Today, I watched the majesty of the clouds move as they rested in pantomime against the blue ceiling. And I was reminded that in life, sometimes all we see are colors instead of how well they work together. I thank you for tuning in and working well with me on this first full week of November, the first Friday in November, but the end of the first full week, and enjoying Gift Friday. Thanking God is today and thanking God is tonight. If you'd like a copy of the poem, I will drop it in the thread on Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you'd like a copy of the book, follow this QR code over my head to my store where you can purchase any of my books. my limited edition Life t-shirt, as well as sign up to receive my monthly fund under the Golden Brick Road and some other free stuff to keep you connected. Have a safe life starting with this day and this weekend again, because you've done it before. Do it again. Thanks for joining me on Gift Friday, where we know that God is for today. I'm Sporty King. Over and out. Peace.